When I first started out in politics, we were campaigning in a local shopping centre, decked out politically, and people kept coming up and putting change on the table because they presumed that I was fundraising for charity when I was actually the candidate for the local state election.
The initial reaction that I get from people when I tell them I'm a psychologist is shock.
The disconnect between the concept of having a lawyer as people know and understand it to be, and then be presented with me, is almost too unreal.
The stereotype that most people have of politicians are of older, richer, white people, predominantly men. And I have to say, as somebody who's been here, that's actually true. As the youngest person ever to be elected to the Senate, and one of the few people with a disability, my presence here in this chamber is a rather radical departure from the norm. My name is Jordan Steele-John, I'm 23 years old, and I'm one of the Greens federal senators for WA. There really is no such thing as an average day in Parliament House. It shifts all over the place, but one of the constants is getting up really early, running through the day, to pardon the metaphor, at what feels like 100 miles an hour, going to bed, getting 5 hours sleep and doing it all again the next day. I have cerebral palsy, which is a form of brain injury, so that means that I can't, walk and do other things. One of the challenges is there's 10 kilometres of corridor in Parliament House, so it's a physically difficult thing to do when the carpet is as thick as they have. If somebody can get me a Big Mac, I'll slip them a party room brief. There have been a number of access challenges, not being able to get into my office or use an accessible loo until just recently, and I've been in here for 6 months. Because if somebody else with a disability...
You shouldn't have to wait for this long, yeah.
I've probably saved an hour or two in my parliamentary day just because I can use the loo in my office and not have to go on a kind of Dora the Explorer style search around the building.
The stereotype of a lawyer is absolutely a white, middle-class, middle-aged man. I do not fit into that stereotype. My name is Natalie Wade, I'm 28 years old, and I'm a lawyer in South Australia. My disability is congenital muscular myopathy. I was born with very weak muscles in my arms and my legs, and as a result have never walked a step in my life. As a young child, I was always intrigued by the opportunity to speak for others that couldn't speak for themselves. I had grown up in mainstream schools. I had able-bodied friends. I was a bit unaware that there would be a struggle for myself or people who are like me. So a typical day for me is probably one that you would expect from any 28-year-old, in that I get up, have brekkie, go to work, come home, have dinner, hang out, and then do it again. However, when I get up at 6:30 to come to work in the morning, I am joined by 2 support workers. So I cannot get out of the house within an hour, really. So if I want to go to the loo really quickly, that takes an hour. If I want to get dressed to go somewhere, that will take an hour and a half.
Natalie's pretty much opened my eyes to the world that she lives in, where accessibility matters. It's really just being able to get in and out of a building is something that I would have completely taken for granted before meeting her.
Lack of physical access to courts and other places where the law is practiced is a form of direct discrimination against me and others who practice with a disability for sure. It is very confronting to go somewhere but you don't know if there's access. That's really unnerving.
I think Nat's career means a great deal to her. Obviously somebody that's experienced discrimination in their own life is going to feel passionate about that, I think.
I don't see myself as someone who's inspiring to others. So if you give a person with a disability the right to education, the right to housing, the right to healthcare, the right to employment, you will get me.
The doubt that I experienced was never with relation to my capacity. It was more about the doubt that I would meet people who had open attitudes and were willing to allow me to access my potential. I'm Jefferson Mack, and I'm a 35-year-old clinical psychology registrar. My disability is a significant vision impairment, a condition called congenital glaucoma. If you want to get an idea of what I see, it's kind of like driving through the thickest fog that you'll ever see. My lack of vision means that every client that I see is pretty much a blank slate in front of me. So how have you been feeling over the past week? The biggest thing that workplaces can do to support somebody with a disability is to have an open and accepting attitude.
Disability is less about your medical impairment and more about society's failure to embrace and include people of all levels of disabilities. What would I tell my 12-year-old self?
To prepare yourself. Learn to adjust early instead of waiting until you've been chucked in the deep end in order to learn to swim.
Never to let anybody tell you that you can't or shouldn't be involved in the spaces where you find your passions.
You will be able to do more in your life than you could ever imagine doing. Being able to grow up and not only have a career, but have a house, have a partner, have your dogs, do really normal things are all ahead, and you don't have to worry that you won't be able to do them.